Imagine this. You really crave some intimacy and decide to unwind, but just then, your younger brother unexpectedly walks into your room and sees you. Let me share my story. I'm Tiffany, 22 years old, and this all happened a few weeks ago when I came home for fall break. To give you some background, I hadn't been back in over 2 years because I was studying abroad in another country. Finally, everything fell into place, and I booked a ticket home. The emotions were overwhelming. I was so happy to see my parents again. Then, my younger brother Jason arrived. Growing up together, he was always around, though he was a bit of an awkward kid and a little younger than me. But when I saw him this time, I could hardly recognize him. The thin, shy boy I remembered had transformed into a tall, broad-shouldered young man with a quiet confidence. He looked like he came straight out of one of those amazing transformation posts on social media. As I hugged him, I could feel the muscles in his back, which was surprising. "You've grown," I exclaimed, genuinely shocked. He just chuckled and scratched the back of his neck, saying, "Yeah, it happens." It wasn't just his physical transformation. He smelled incredible. Whether it was cologne or just him, it took me by surprise. The rest of the evening, I found myself sneaking glances at him, noticing things I'd never seen before. His deeper laugh, the calmness in his eyes. It felt like meeting a new person, yet I had known him my whole life. Now let's get to the main point. That first night back, after all the hugs and indulging in my mom's delicious lasagna, I was completely drained. After traveling for over 18 hours, including layovers and delays, I had no energy left. Once we all said goodnight, I headed up to shower and get some rest in my old room. My old room still looked familiar. My parents had converted some parts into a guest room, but left my posters, the bookshelf filled with my favorite young adult novels, and some old school items scattered about. Walking in felt like stepping into a time capsule full of nostalgia. But all I wanted was to crawl into bed and sleep. After a refreshing shower that melted away the stiffness from the plane journey, I slipped into an oversized t-shirt, turned off the lights, and nestled under the blankets. It was cool, cozy, and peaceful, the kind of quiet that can only be found in your childhood home. I'm not sure if it was the jet lag, the school stress fading away, or maybe it was just Jason showing up in my life, again, looking so different. But as I lay there in the dark, my mind began to drift. It had been ages since I'd experienced any intimacy, really. Between school and everything else going on, I simply hadn't had the time or energy to connect with anyone like that. So I thought, why not take some time for myself? The house was quiet, and it felt like the right moment to unwind. I closed my eyes and let my hands explore my skin, the sensations feeling soft and comforting. It was like a way to reconnect with myself. My fingertips brushed over my lips and then my neck, and I started to feel warmth building inside me. But then, out of nowhere, Jason's face popped into my head. I hadn't meant to think of him, yet there he was, with his sharp jawline and that slightly messy hair, full of quiet confidence. I felt a heat in my chest and spread lower, igniting like wildfire. I tried to shake off the thought, telling myself it was silly since I hadn't seen him in years. Yet, the image lingered, becoming stronger the more I resisted. I kept imagining him, how different he looked now, and the way his deep laugh had a bit of an edge to it. I replayed that warm hug he gave me earlier, feeling how solid he was. Eventually, I stopped fighting the thought and allowed it to wash over me. I let my fingers wander lower, getting lost in that warmth. My breathing became quick and shallow as I sank deeper into the moment. The room felt utterly still, like the rest of the world faded away, leaving just me and this powerful feeling. And again, there was Jason in my mind, but this time I didn't resist. I imagined his strong hands moving over my skin and heard his low, teasing voice saying my name. The fantasy felt so real, and my body responded instantly. The way I moved and the way my body arched felt electric, almost as if every part of me was alive. That earlier warmth transformed into something undeniable, a blend of comfort and thrill. It wasn't just a physical sensation either. There was an emotional connection too. Perhaps it was because Jason played such a significant role in my life while growing up. Or maybe it was the surprise of seeing him again after so long, looking and acting like a brand new person. Whatever the reason, this feeling was powerful. I completely lost myself in the moment, letting everything else fade away. My hands began to move with more confidence, and I found myself breathing harder. Now, let's get to the main point. That first night back, after all the hugs and indulging in my mom's delicious lasagna, I was completely drained. After traveling for over 18 hours, including layovers and delays, I had no energy left. Once we all said goodnight, I headed up to shower and get some rest in my old room. My old room still looked familiar. My parents had converted some parts into a guest room, but left my posters, the bookshelf filled with my favorite young adult novels, and some old school items scattered about. Walking in felt like stepping into a time capsule full of nostalgia, but all I wanted was to crawl into bed and sleep. After a refreshing shower that melted away the stiffness from the plane journey, I slipped into an oversized t-shirt, turned off the lights, and nestled under the blankets. It was cool, cozy, and peaceful, the kind of quiet that can only be found in your childhood home. I'm not sure if it was the jet lag, the school, stress fading away, or maybe it was just Jason showing up in my life, again looking so different. But as I lay there in the dark, my mind began to drift. It had been ages since I'd experienced any intimacy, really. Between school and everything else going on, I simply hadn't had the time or energy to connect with anyone like that. So I thought, why not take some time for myself? The house was quiet, and it felt like the right moment to unwind. I closed my eyes and let my hands explore my skin, the sensations feeling soft and comforting. It was like a way to reconnect with myself. My fingertips brushed over my lips and then my neck, and I started to feel warmth building inside me. But then, out of nowhere, Jason's face popped into my head. I hadn't meant to think of him, yet there he was, with his sharp jawline and that slightly messy hair, full of quiet confidence. I felt a heat in my chest and spread lower, igniting like wildfire. I tried to shake off the thought, telling myself it was silly since I hadn't seen him in years. Yet, the image lingered, becoming stronger the more I resisted. I kept imagining him, how different he looked now, and the way his deep laugh had a bit of an edge to it. I replayed that warm hug he gave me earlier, feeling how solid he was. Eventually, I stopped fighting the thought and allowed it to wash over me. I let my fingers wander lower, getting lost in that warmth. My breathing became quick and shallow as I sank deeper into the moment. The room felt utterly still, like the rest of the world faded away, leaving just me and this powerful feeling. And again, there was Jason in my mind, but this time I didn't resist. I imagined his strong hands moving over my skin and heard his low, teasing voice saying my name. The fantasy felt so real, and my body responded instantly. The way I moved and the way my body arched felt electric, almost as if every part of me was alive. That earlier warmth transformed into something undeniable, a blend of comfort and thrill. It wasn't just a physical sensation either. There was an emotional connection too. Perhaps it was because Jason played such a significant role in my life while growing up. Or maybe it was the surprise of seeing him again after so long, looking and acting like a brand new person. Whatever the reason, this feeling was powerful. I completely lost myself in the moment, letting everything else fade away. My hands began to move with more confidence, and I found myself breathing harder. Jason's figure filled my mind, his hands on my waist, his lips brushing against my ear. I knew this was forbidden. After all, Jason was the kid I used to babysit when I was 14, but that made everything feel even more thrilling. It was wrong, yet I couldn't resist the memories flooding back, like the sound of his laughter and the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. Now, those memories were mixed with a new attraction I didn't know how to handle. The room was dim, illuminated only by the soft glow of a street lamp outside my window. The air felt heavy and charged as my thoughts spiraled more deeply. Each touch I imagined sent shivers through my body. And just thinking about him made my heart race. But just when I was fully lost in my thoughts, a small voice in my head whispered, "What are you doing?" "This is Jason." It felt like a splash of cold water, and for a moment, I paused. I opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling, trying to grasp what I was feeling. Yet, the hesitation quickly faded. I told myself this was just a fantasy, a way to relax after a long day, and there was no harm in that. So, I closed my eyes again and sank back into that warm, electric haze. This time, my fingers moved purposefully, letting the fantasy take control. There was no stopping now. The only sounds were my breathing and the softness of the blankets around me, along with the vivid image of Jason in my mind. I imagined how his strong, warm hands would feel, and how his deep, teasing voice would call my name in a way that sent chills down my spine. His eyes were unforgettable, a mixture of playful and calm, as if he held secrets he wasn't sharing. It felt so forbidden, like I was crossing an invisible line, but that just made the feeling even stronger. My body was fully in tune with the moment, my breathing deep, and I was on the brink of something intense. Then, out of nowhere, the door to my room burst open with a loud crash, slamming against the wall. "Tiffany!" Jason's voice sliced through the air, snapping me back to reality. I froze completely, my body tensing as my mind short-circuited. There I was, lying there wide-eyed, and there was Jason, standing in the doorway with his eyes as big as saucers, realizing what he had just walked in on. The silence that followed was deafening. I could see the exact moment when Jason finally understood what was happening. His mouth fell open, his face turned bright red, and he just stood there, frozen in shock. He didn't even try to look away. His eyes were locked on me, with his mouth slightly ajar, like his entire brain had crashed. Meanwhile, I was just lying there feeling foolish and completely exposed, not in a physical sense, but emotionally, which somehow felt worse. I was unable to move or speak, as if my mind refused to process everything. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, my thoughts began to click back into place. "Jason, what the heck?" I shouted, my voice much louder than I meant it to be. He blinked rapidly, snapping out of his daze. "I didn't know you never locked your door," he replied, quickly sitting up and grabbing a pillow to cover himself. Even though I was fully dressed, my heart was racing, and not in a good way this time. Jason's face was still beet red, but then he managed to give a small smirk at the corner of his mouth, and I honestly wanted to throw something at him. "You might want to hang a sign on your door," he said jokingly, backing away from the room with his hands up as if he was surrendering. "Just saying." Then he laughed, a genuine laugh, as if he hadn't just stumbled upon one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. He closed the door behind him, and I could hear him running down the stairs, still chuckling to himself. I was left sitting there in complete shock. My face was burning, my heart felt like it was racing out of my chest, and I wanted nothing more than to hide away forever. But then came the surprising part. I realized that, strangely, this whole situation had affected me in a way I hadn't anticipated. As I sat there replaying the scene in my mind, I couldn't help but remember the look on his face when he froze, his wide eyes, his unguarded surprise. Instead of just feeling ashamed, I felt this unexpected spark. It was like he had seen me in my most vulnerable state, and, as much as I didn't want to admit it, it excited me. Sure, humiliation was still there, but it was mixed with a thrilling energy I couldn't ignore. My mind kept going back to Jason, standing in the doorway, his expression shifting from shock to amusement. It felt like something had shifted between us. A line had been crossed and there was no going back. I tried to put it out of my head and focus on anything else, but it was no use. The image of him was burned into my memory. Each time I thought about it, that little spark ignited into something much bigger. For the next couple of hours, I paced around my room, trying to calm down and understand these feelings. But the more I thought about it, the clearer it became that something significant had changed. This situation had become more than just a simple crush. It was about Jason, the boy I grew up with. He used to annoy me all the time, but now, after years apart, I realized I wanted him. I couldn't shake the feeling anymore. This was real, not just a daydream. The next day, memories of what had happened kept replaying in my mind. I was no longer embarrassed. Instead, I felt a thrilling rush every time I thought of him. However, Jason was acting completely casual about it. He was joking around at breakfast, scrolling on his phone while my mom shared her latest cooking ideas. It seemed like nothing had changed for him, while I was a bundle of nerves, struggling to even make eye contact. I felt like I was about to explode with emotion. I tried to keep my distance from him throughout the day, which was tricky in our small house. I helped my mom fold laundry, caught up on emails, and tried to focus on a book I'd wanted to finish, but my thoughts always drifted back to Jason. Later that afternoon, my dad called me into the living room. He and my mom looked like they had important news. They were planning to go see my grandparents, who needed help with a few things. My dad mentioned they would be back home in the morning, and we'd celebrate my return then. I nodded, trying to keep my cool, even though my heart started racing. Jason was on the floor across the room, looking through a magazine when my dad shouted, "Hey Jason, you keep an eye on things while we're gone. Don't burn the house down." Jason just grinned and joked back, saying he'd try his best. My mom laughed as they quickly gathered their things and headed out, leaving the house quiet once more. At first, I tried to keep it together. I hung out in my room, scrolling through my phone, but was acutely aware of every little thing Jason did downstairs. I could hear him moving around, the sounds of dishes in the kitchen, and the TV coming to life as he settled in to watch something. But as time went on, I felt increasingly restless. The memory of last night was still vivid, and I was practically buzzing with excitement. I knew I wanted to be near him. Nothing else mattered to me, and I didn't want to overthink things this time. As night fell, the house became eerily quiet, with only the soft hum of the TV drifting from downstairs. Unable to hold back any longer, I decided to sneak out of my room. I tiptoed down the hallway toward Jason's room, where the door was slightly open. Peeking inside, I found him fast asleep, lying on his side with his back to me, one arm tucked under his pillow. For a brief moment, I hesitated, my heart racing so fast I thought it might wake him. But the longer I stood there, the more courage, or perhaps recklessness, I felt. I quietly slipped into his room and gently closed the door behind me. His room was dim, illuminated only by the soft glow of a desk lamp. The rhythm of his steady breathing was calming, yet made my own breath catch in my throat. Summoning my nerve, I climbed onto the bed and lay down beside him, my body buzzing with anticipation. I mirrored his position, lying on my side with my back to him, close enough to feel his warmth. I took a moment to savor the stillness around us. My thoughts raced, but deep inside, I knew what I wanted. I started to inch closer to him, my hand accidentally brushing against his. He stirred slightly, but didn't wake up. My heart pounded, yet I kept going, and soon he turned over. His eyes fluttered open, confusion melting into surprise. "Tiffany, what are you doing?" he croaked, his voice rough from sleep. Initially, I didn't respond. Instead, I took his hand and placed it on my waist. His palm felt warm and firm, and for a moment, he merely froze, staring at me in disbelief. "It's your fault for coming into my room without knocking," I whispered softly, my voice barely audible. He looked at me, his expression a strange mix of confusion and something else I couldn't quite define. Gradually, his tension eased, and his hand moved on its own, sliding against my side. I could sense the moment he surrendered to the moment. Everything felt surreal. His hand hovered over me, hesitant and shaky, reflecting the nerves of stepping into unfamiliar territory. His fingers trembled slightly, and I could see a mixture of uncertainty, fear, and curiosity in his gaze. I could see him deep in thought, possibly weighing his options. Should he laugh it off, run away, or embrace the moment? Honestly, I was struggling to keep my composure. But then something changed. I gave him a gentle nod, silently reassuring him that it was okay and that I wanted this. He didn't need to overthink things. That small gesture seemed to give him the confidence he needed. His hand began to move slowly, almost like he was testing the waters. His fingers brushed against my side, warm and solid, yet still a bit uncertain. I could read the conflict on his face, but I also noticed a spark of determination. He wanted to make this right, even though he wasn't quite sure how, which added an extra layer of intensity to the moment. As his hand lightly touched my skin, I let out a shaky breath. It was more than just a physical sensation. It was clear how much effort he was putting into this. He was trying to understand what felt good and what didn't, which made the experience feel raw and vulnerable. I kept my hand on his chest, feeling the rhythm of his breath. His skin was warm beneath my palm, and I could sense the firm muscles underneath. I even noticed the faint veins in his arms, visible even in the low light. Jason's initial nervousness began to fade as he grew more comfortable. His movements became more assured and intentional. He wasn't just awkwardly going through the motions. He was genuinely focused, watching how I reacted and adjusting accordingly. He was doing an impressive job, and despite my anticipation, I couldn't help but smile. There was something charming about how he approached everything, as if he were exploring something completely new. He was fully committed to making it a good experience for both of us. Of course, it wasn't perfect. There were moments when his inexperience showed, hesitations or small missteps, but the effort he was putting in to create a meaningful connection more than made up for those instances. The overwhelming sensations brought me to life. It felt like my entire body was tuned into him. The room felt warmer, the air thicker, and an electric current flowed between us. It was far more intense than I had anticipated, more powerful than anything I had felt in a long time. As the seconds passed, Jason's confidence blossomed. His movements grew smoother and more assured. I could see the transformation in him as his fear slipped away, replaced by a bolder energy. For me, everything else faded into the background. The awkwardness, the uncertainties, and even the worries about what this all meant disappeared. The only thing that mattered was him and the beautiful connection we were forming together. In that moment, we were completely focused on each other, and then everything changed. A rush of intense feelings swept over me, leaving me breathless. It felt 5 times stronger than anything I'd felt before. Perhaps it was because this experience was not just physical, but emotional too. The way he looked at me, the effort he was putting in, and the fact that we were both diving into something entirely new together made it all the more special. I let out a nervous laugh, resting my forehead against his. "You're better at this than I thought," I teased him softly, my voice barely a whisper. He smiled back at me with a mix of pride and relief. "I didn't think I'd survive this," he admitted quietly, and we both laughed, the tension between us fading into something more comfortable and warm. In that moment, I realized this was about more than just what was happening. It was about him. Almost instinctively, I leaned in closer, taking my time. I wanted to give him the option to pull away if he needed to, but he didn't. His gaze flickered to my lips, and that was all the encouragement I required. When our lips met, it was gentle at first, almost like we were testing the waters. His lips felt warm and unexpectedly soft, and I sensed a hint of hesitation in his kiss, as if he was still unsure if this was really happening. But as the moments passed, that hesitance started to fade. He tilted his head slightly, pushing into the kiss with a bit more confidence, and I felt a familiar heat rush through me. I couldn't quite explain what it was about Jason that drove me wild, especially since the moment felt so unexpected and almost forbidden. I noticed his inexperience, the way he was figuring it all out as we kissed, which somehow made the experience even more real. Wanting to take charge, I gently pushed him back until he was lying flat on the couch. His eyes widened for a moment, but he didn't resist. I climbed on top of him, straddling his waist, and couldn't help but smile at his expression, half nervous, half amazed, as if he couldn't believe this was happening. "Relax," I murmured, my hands gliding down his chest. His shirt had hiked up, revealing a small patch of his toned skin and the faint outline of his abs. I traced my fingers along that line, feeling his muscles tense under my touch. He began to say something, but I silenced him with another kiss, this one deeper and much more intense. As I positioned myself closer to him, I could sense him relax underneath me. His hands cautiously found their way to my hips, and our kisses became more intense and passionate. My fingers found their way into his hair, pulling gently as I felt him shiver beneath my touch. His grip on my hips tightened, and for a brief moment, I thought he might take control. However, he simply gazed up at me, completely immersed in the moment, allowing me to guide us. I found it incredibly empowering to be the one steering this experience, watching how he reacted to my every move, his breath catching whenever I shifted my weight or lightly ran my fingers along his skin. It was exhilarating to know I had such an effect on him, and it seemed to boost his confidence as his hands began to explore more freely. I could feel the difference in him as he gradually let go of his nerves and started to enjoy the moment fully. Every touch, kiss, and little movement felt heightened and more intense. I couldn't tell if it was the thrill of the moment, the excitement, or simply the fact that we shared this connection, but I felt an exhilarating spark between us. As our kisses grew more fervent and urgent, I could sense his heartbeat matching mine, our breaths quickening as we lost ourselves in each other. I ran my hands along his arms, feeling his strong muscles contract under my touch. I wanted him so much, but I was also aware of the need for caution, so I decided to lower myself to my knees beside him. I took this position slowly, wanting to make sure he felt at ease. Everything around us felt like it was unfolding in slow motion, with an unspoken trust developing between us. There were no expectations, just a mutual understanding that we were navigating this experience together, both physically and emotionally. His reactions were sincere. He seemed a bit nervous, yet wholly engaged in what was happening. It was clear that this was a new experience for him, and I honored that by not pushing him beyond his comfort zone, enjoying the journey we were on together. I let things happen naturally, without any pressure. In moments like these, the physical aspect is just a small part. What mattered more was how we communicated through our actions, always respecting each other's boundaries. Afterward, I turned to Jason and asked if he was a virgin. He looked me in the eye and said no, but it felt like there was more behind his words. As I left, I began to feel a mix of confusion, guilt, and maybe even shame about what happened. It felt intense and real, unlike anything I'd experienced before. Should I feel guilty? What do you think? Let me know in the comments.